Hi, today I'm going to show you about color balance and the curves adjustment layer. So if we look at this image, we can see it's a little bit blue. Now, when you're actually at the location, your eye compensates and it doesn't see it as this blue. But the camera can't compensate like our eye can, and even if you let it know that you're shooting in shade, it still might come out a little blue. So what we need to do is we need to balance this. So how do we do that is let's go down to the adjustment layer palette. So again, this circle that's half white, half black, and let's go to curves. And we're going to click on this middle eyedropper that is filled with gray. And now we're going to look for something that is neutral, so something that should be gray. We could try this tin, but you can see there's a lot of highlights and reflections, so it might not work. And this knife here, it's a little too bright. You don't want something that's too light, too white, or too black. You want something about mid-gray. So let's try clicking on something really bright like this knife. Now you notice that it shouldn't be like that. We don't want it to be that yellow. So undo that. If we click on here even, it goes too yellow, or this white. See, you can't choose anything too bright. But we can try over here, there, or even this rock, because that should be, these should be gray. These should be quite neutral, and you can see how it's changed the overall color. And let's turn this off and on. So this was before we color corrected. I know this is after we've color corrected. You can see it's much. It's what your eye saw when you were there. There is another way to do this, so I'm just going to close this image. If you open the raw file, you can see that there is a gray color dropper up here. So you can click on that, and then you could click on the neutral gray areas, and it corrects the color. Okay, now let's open this image. So let's open another curves layer. So we don't need to color correct it because it's already been corrected. But I'll show you about these two eyedroppers. So if you click on the eyedropper filled with black, basically that means whatever you click with this eyedropper tool will turn to black. So like if you click on the white, that's too much. And what we can use this for is to add more contrast to the image. Let's double click on the eyedropper. You'll see how I've set the values to 10, 10, 10. They default to 0, 0, which means whatever you click will be pure black. So we don't want it to be quite pure black, so let's set it back to 10, 10. Okay, and it's going to ask to save the new target colors as default, so I'm going to click yes. So we're going to find something that is really close to this 10, 10, 10 RGB value I've input. And to see what is close to that, we're going to actually pull up the info palette. So you click on the little eye over here, and then we're going to use these RGB values. So let's just sort of look around. You can see over here, this little white, it's 204, 212, 220, around there, so it's closer to white. 0 is black, and 255 is pure white. So this is close to 10, 10, 10. So is this even? Let's just give it a little try. So you can see how a bit more contrast was added. And now we could do the same with white. Let's click on the white eyedropper tool. I've changed the values of this. Usually it'll be at 255, 255, 255, which is pure white, but we want it to be not quite pure white, so change it to 250, 250, 250. Hit OK. And then let's find something that's close to the 250 value. It should be quite neutral. We don't want to pick a color. We want it to be something that was a really light gray or close to white. Let's see. Let's try clicking on here. You can see how the contrast has changed. Also, it's brightened up a bit. So let's turn this off and on. See, a bit of contrast has been added. Now you can also do that by eye if you want to add some more contrast. So I'm just gonna delete this layer. Let's pull up another curves layer. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a little point here, another point here. And this point near the bottom, you can see it's near the shadow right here, and then up here it shows you that these are the highlights. So we're going to pull that down a bit. We're going to darken what's already dark. And then if we go up here to this top anchor point, we'll raise it a little bit. So you can see it's darkening the darks and lightening the lights. Let's turn this off and on. So you just added some contrast there. You can be really subtle with it you don't need too much. It's best to be subtle rather than really extreme. If you do want to go really extreme, you can see it adds a little too much contrast. And when you're working in RGB, curves, adding any contrast with curves or levels will change the overall saturation. So let's just keep it subtle. Another thing you can do, you see here it says RGB. If you click on this little drop down menu, you have red, green, and blue. So you can individually adjust each of these channels. So if we go to red, you see you bring this up, you're adding a lot more red, or adding more green. You could manually adjust the color balance using these individual channels if you have a really well-trained eye, and if you have a monitor that's calibrated correctly. Another thing you can do is you can just play around with color adjustments. I'm just going to delete center point. Maybe make it really red. Add some magenta. If you want to play around with color, make it look kind of maybe vintagey. You can change the blending mode, just sort of play around. You can change the opacity of it. If you just want to give it something a little different, a little unique, add some yellow. Because you don't always want it to be completely neutral. It depends on what you're trying to achieve in the image. And so that's the basics of the curves adjustment layer.